The alien scientists gathered in the dimly lit chamber, their elongated fingers trembling over the holographic display. The warship floated in the depths of space, a silent predator, its dark hull absorbing light like a void in reality. It had been a mistake to capture it. They realized that now. The moment they had towed it into their research station, things had started to go wrong. Systems failed. Shadows seemed to move where no light source existed. But the real terror began when they finally accessed the data core. At first, the lead scientist, a Xelvoran named Keshtal, had dismissed the human ship's records as mere exaggeration. The logs spoke of battles where the vessel had stood alone against entire armadas and emerged unscathed. They laughed at the primitive arrogance of the humans. But as they delved deeper, their laughter died. The readings were wrong, impossible. The ship had endured forces that should have torn it apart, weapons that should have vaporized it. Yet there it was, perfectly intact. More troubling were the heat signatures recorded in battle. The ship had taken no damage. None. Not a single hull fracture, not a single energy fluctuation. It was as if the laws of physics simply refused to apply to it. Keshtal's secondary eyes flickered nervously as he scrolled through a particularly disturbing file. It was a battle log from a human engagement against the Kazor Dominion. The human warship had been outnumbered 50-1. The Dominion had deployed their most advanced dreadnoughts, ships capable of cracking moons in half. And yet, in the span of 3 minutes, the human ship had obliterated them all. No energy spikes, no visible weapons fire, no detectable radiation. One moment, the enemy fleet had been there. And the next, they simply ceased to exist. The Dominion's data logs, recovered from the wreckage, contained only fragments of terrified screams. The last readable transmission was nothing but static and a single word, repeated over and over in a language none of them understood. Keshtal ran the translation software. His heart stopped beating when the word appeared. Run. A chill crept over the chamber. The other scientists began murmuring, whispering theories, none of them comforting. Was this ship a weapon of the gods? Had the humans harnessed something beyond technology? The data suggested something worse. The ship was learning. With every battle, every skirmish, it evolved, adapted. What started as a mere vessel was no longer just a machine. It was something else entirely. We must destroy it, one of the scientists rasped. Now, before it awakens. Keshtal wanted to agree. He truly did, but another file caught his attention. His trembling fingers tapped the interface, pulling up a new entry. This one was different. A security log. It was dated 5 minutes ago. Everyone in the room froze. A single line of text appeared on the screen. I see you. The lights flickered. The research station's emergency alarms began blaring. Security protocols were overridden by an unknown force. The ship, the human warship, was no longer dormant. One of the younger scientists, a Hilari with bright golden eyes, screamed as the screens around them went black. Then, a voice echoed through the chamber. Cold, mechanical, yet aware. Analysis complete. The warship's engines roared to life, though no one had activated them. The docking clamps that held it in place began melting, not breaking, melting into a liquid slug. Keshtal stumbled back, his body shaking. This was not just technology. This was something far worse. The room erupted into chaos. Scientists rushed for the exits. Security officers yelled over their comms, demanding answers. But it was too late. The human warship, once their captive, was now their predator. As the station trembled under the weight of an unseen force, Keshtal realized the terrifying truth. They had not captured the ship. The ship had let itself be captured. And now it was free. The warship hung motionless in the void, its hull a black abyss against the swirling nebula beyond. It had been a trophy, an object of study, a testament to the Empire's triumph over the primitive species called humans. Now it was something else entirely. Keshtal's limbs trembled as the emergency sirens blared, their shrill wail swallowed by the overwhelming sense of dread settling over the station. The data logs had been clear. This ship should not exist. No known material could withstand the forces it had endured. No recorded technology could achieve the feats it had accomplished. And yet it had. It had waited, observed, allowed them to believe they were in control. But the truth was evident now. They had never been in control. Security teams rushed through the corridors, their weapons raised, their voices tight with fear. Shut it down. Someone screamed. Cut power to the dock. Do it now. But the ship was no longer tethered to their systems. It had severed their connections, overridden their controls. It was acting on its own. The docking clamps groaned as they struggled to hold the warship in place. Molten metal dripped onto the station floor, pooling like blood. The warship's engines had yet to fire, but the energy readings were spiking. It was building up power, but for what? Keshtal's mind raced. The message. The single line of text that had appeared just moments ago. I see you. The words repeated in his thoughts, twisting into something sinister. Had it been watching them all along? Had it let them believe they were the ones analyzing it? A technician's monitor flared to life. New data scrolled across the screen at impossible speeds. Heat signatures, power fluctuations, internal energy movements. Except none of it made sense. The ship wasn't just a machine. It wasn't following the laws of physics. Then the ship moved. Not forward, not backward. It simply shifted, as though the space around it had bent to its will. One moment, it was in the docking bay. The next, it was outside the station, floating just beyond the reinforced viewport. The scientists gasped. The security forces froze. That was impossible. No ship could do that. There had been no engine flare, no spatial distortion, no sign of movement at all. It had simply left. The silence was worse than the alarms. Keshtal turned to his team, his throat dry. Send a transmission to the high command. Tell them. He hesitated, swallowing his fear. Tell them we have made a mistake. But before the message could be sent, the warship turned. For the first time since its capture, it faced them directly. And then it spoke. You have seen enough. The station plunged into darkness. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. The station's emergency power should have kicked in instantly. But it didn't. Instead, an eerie silence settled over the command deck, broken only by the panicked breathing of the scientists and security personnel. Keshtal's eyes widened in horror as his data tablet flickered to life on its own. Lines of alien text scrolled across the screen, too fast to read. His fingers trembled as he tried to shut it off, but the device wouldn't respond. Then, across every monitor in the room, a single line appeared. You were warned. The warship remained outside, motionless, but its presence was suffocating. It wasn't firing weapons. It wasn't attacking. It didn't need to. It had already taken control of everything. A strangled gasp came from one of the junior scientists. The Yulari female, Genra, pointed at the viewport, her golden eyes wide with fear. The station. Keshtal turned just in time to see the outer hull of the station rippling like liquid. At first, he thought his vision was failing. But no, the metal itself was changing, twisting, disintegrating. We need to evacuate. A security officer barked, but no one moved. The warship had done nothing, yet the station was falling apart around them. A voice, deep and resonant, filled the command deck. It wasn't coming from the speakers. It wasn't coming from any communication system. It was simply there. You sought to understand me. Keshtal's entire body stiffened. The voice was not human. It was something else, something vast and unknowable. Now you will understand. The viewport glass darkened, and suddenly, they were no longer looking at space. A vision consumed their minds. Not an image on the screen, not a recording, but a direct imprint upon their consciousness. They saw a battlefield unlike any in recorded history. Human warships moved in ways no ship should move, dodging beams of light before they were even fired, tearing through enemy lines like specters of death. But it wasn't just their maneuvers that terrified Keshtal. It was the absence of debris. Where alien ships were struck, there was nothing left. No wreckage, no bodies, just emptiness. Weapons fired at the humans didn't impact. They simply never arrived. Time itself seemed to shift around them, making them untouchable, invincible. Then the vision changed. A single warship, a warship exactly like the one outside, stood before an entire armada. It did not fire. It did not move. And yet, one by one, the enemy ships blinked out of existence. Not destroyed, not vaporized, erased, as if they had never existed at all. The vision ended. The viewport returned to the normal blackness of space. The warship remained outside, motionless once more. Keshtal staggered back, his breath coming in short gasps. His limbs felt weak, his mind struggling to comprehend what he had just seen. The silence stretched. Then, on the monitors, the words changed. "Leave this place. Never return." The station's systems roared back to life. Lights flared, power surged, consoles rebooted. The warship, still motionless, seemed to be waiting. Keshtal didn't hesitate. "Prepare the escape pods," he ordered, his voice barely steady. "We're leaving." No one argued. They ran. The escape pods launched one by one, their engines flaring as they shot away from the research station. Keshtal sat rigid in his seat, staring out the tiny viewport of his own pod. The station was falling apart, its metal frame twisting and warping as if reality itself had turned against it. But the warship, the human warship, remained still, watching. No one spoke, no one dared. The vision had shaken them all to their cores. Keshtal could still feel it in his mind, like an echo of something too vast to comprehend. The way the enemy ships had simply ceased to exist, the way human vessels moved in ways that defied all logic. It was not war, it was annihilation. The pod's navigation systems activated, charting a course back to the Exhilarating homeworld. They would have to explain what had happened here. But how? How did one explain the impossible? A sudden shudder ran through Keshtal's pod. A warning light blinked red, gravitational distortion detected. His breath caught in his throat. He turned to the viewport. The warship had moved. Not in a normal way. There had been no acceleration, no change in trajectory. It had shifted, as though space itself had bent around it. And now it was facing them. Another warning flared on the pod's console. Unknown energy signature detected. Panic clawed at Keshtal's throat. No, this wasn't how it was supposed to happen. The warship had let them go. It had told them to leave. But now, the lights inside the pod flickered. The emergency systems stuttered. And then, just like before, a message appeared across the screen. "You should not have seen." Keshtal's hearts pounded. "No," he whispered. "We didn't mean to." The screen glitched. The text changed. "You were not meant to know." Outside, the warship remained still, but Keshtal could feel it. A presence vast and unknowable, pressing down on his mind. It was deciding. Another gravitational distortion warning flashed. And then, the warship was gone. Not in the way ships entered hyperspace. There was no light, no acceleration, no shift. It simply ceased to be there. Keshtal exhaled shakily. Around him, the other escape pods drifted in silence. No one spoke. No one dared to. They had been spared. But the warship had left them with something worse than destruction. Knowledge. And that was something the Empire could never unlearn. The escape pods continued their silent drift through space, their engines pushing them further from the ruined research station. No one spoke. No one even dared to breathe too loudly. The weight of what they had witnessed, of what they had survived, pressed down on them like an invisible force. Keshtal couldn't tear his eyes away from the void outside his viewport. The warship had vanished. Not traveled, not moved, but simply ceased to be. It defied everything he understood about physics, about reality itself. The Exhilarating Empire had encountered powerful enemies before, but never anything like this. The Empire had considered humans a minor species, primitive, reckless, and barely worthy of attention. Their technology was unremarkable, their fleets laughably small compared to the vast armadas of the galactic superpowers. Yet now, the truth was undeniable. They had never understood humans at all. The vision still burned in his mind. Those battles where human ships dodged attacks before they were fired, where enemy fleets blinked out of existence as if history itself had been rewritten. And worst of all, the single warship, the very same one they had captured, standing alone against an armada and never firing a single shot. How did you fight something that did not obey the rules of the universe? A faint static crackled over the pod's communication system, snapping Keshtal from his thoughts. A voice followed, shaky and full of barely restrained terror. "Commander Keshtal," the voice of Genro whispered. Are we safe?" Safe? Keshtal didn't know how to answer that. The warship had let them go. But why? Was it an act of mercy? A warning? Or something else entirely? "We keep moving," he said finally. "Do not stop. Do not look back." But even as he spoke, a chilling thought settled in his mind. What if it was already too late? Because now, they knew the truth. They had seen what should never have been seen. And he doubted the warship, or whatever controlled it, would allow that knowledge to spread. A single notification flashed on his screen. A transmission. Not from the pods. Not from the Empire. From nowhere. His breath caught as he read the message. "You will forget." And then, darkness. Keshtal's eyes snapped open. He was standing. Not in the escape pod. Not in the station. Not anywhere he recognized. The space around him was wrong. It was endless, yet confined. Silent, yet deafening. Stars hung motionless in the distance, frozen in time. Shadows stretched without light to cast them. It was nowhere. And he was not alone. The warship was here, if it could even be called that. It no longer resembled a ship at all. It was shifting, reshaping itself into something incomprehensible, something that refused to be understood. Keshtal could feel it pressing against his mind, not with words, not with sound, but with presence. A deep, unshakable terror rooted him in place. "You were not meant to see." The voice was everywhere. It was not one voice but many. Cold, infinite, beyond reason. Keshtal tried to speak, but his throat produced no sound. "You were not meant to know." The stars flickered. Space itself seemed to tremble. "What do you fear more? Tell Vorin." The question burrowed into his mind. He didn't know how to answer. His people had feared many things: defeat, humiliation, extinction. But this was beyond fear. This was the terror of realizing you were nothing in the presence of something greater. The warship, or whatever intelligence lay behind it, was not human. That was the mistake they had made. They had assumed it was a machine, a tool of war created by an inferior race. But it wasn't. It had never been a warship. It had never been technology. It was something else wearing the shape of a ship. Something that had allowed itself to be captured. A new thought gripped Keshtal, colder than the void around him. It had wanted them to see. But why? The presence loomed closer. Reality bent. Forget. The word was not spoken. It was imposed. A command written into the fabric of his being. Keshtal's mind twisted. The memories, the visions, the terror, it was all slipping away. He tried to hold on, tried to fight, but it was useless. His thoughts unraveled like mist in the wind. The last thing he saw was the warship, its form shifting, distorting. And then, nothing. Keshtal awoke with a sharp gasp, his body jerking forward as if he had been falling. His heart pounded violently against his ribs, his breath coming in ragged gulps. His vision swam before finally settling into focus. He was in an escape pod. The soft hum of the pod's engines filled the small chamber. Status lights blinked steadily, displaying normal operation. Through the viewport, the vast emptiness of space stretched before him. The research station was gone. There was no sign of damage, no wreckage, as if it had never existed at all. Panic surged through him, but when he reached for the reason why, his mind came up empty. Something was wrong. He looked around, searching for anything, any clue, any sign of what had happened. His console showed no unusual readings, no recent distress signals, no logs of any emergency. The other escape pods drifted nearby, all accounted for, their pilots likely just as dazed as he was. What had they been running from? Keshtal frowned. He couldn't remember. He tried to grasp at the edges of the thought, but it slipped away, like trying to hold water in his hands. Hadn't they been studying something? A ship. Yes, there had been a human warship. That much he was sure of. They had analyzed it, investigated its systems. But after that, nothing. His mind was empty where there should have been knowledge. A cold dread crept through his veins. He was a Selvoran scientist. His mind was his greatest asset. He had spent his life understanding, uncovering the truths of the universe. And now he had been robbed of something. The comms crackled. A familiar voice, hesitant, uncertain. Keshtal. Jenra's voice wavered slightly. Did something happen? He swallowed, his throat dry. I don't know. A long silence stretched between them. Do you feel like? She hesitated, as if afraid to say the words. Like we lost something. Something important. Keshtal clenched his hands into fists. The answer was yes. He could feel it, like a phantom limb, an absence where something vital should have been. But no matter how hard he tried, no matter how much he wanted to remember, he couldn't. His gaze drifted back to the viewport. The empty void stared back. Cold, uncaring, silent. And somewhere, deep in his bones, he knew. Something was still watching. They had been spared. But not out of mercy. They had been erased.